Hey folks, it's me again. Now, I've shared a lot of stories with you all. Tales that chill the bone, make you glance over your shoulder, or question what shadows might lurk in the corner of your room when the light fades. But today, I've got something different. It's not just a story, it's a slice of my life. A chapter I wish never had to be written. So, grab your comfort blanket, because we're about to dive deep into a nightmare that became all too real. It was a Thursday morning, just like any other. The kind where the sun decides to play hide and seek behind the clouds, leaving you guessing whether you'd need an umbrella or sunglasses for the day. I remember the steam from my coffee blurring the window as I watched my 8-year-old son, Danny, chase his shadow in the yard, waiting for the school bus. He had this laughter, infectious and pure, a sound that could turn even the dreariest day bright. Our routine was like a well-oiled machine. Wake up, breakfast, a bit of TV, and then the scramble to get Danny ready for school before the bus arrived. It was a dance we had perfected over the years, moving through the steps with ease. That morning, I remember tying his shoelaces, double knots to keep them from coming loose, and handing him his superhero lunchbox, a new addition he was particularly proud of. He dashed off with a grin, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders as he went to claim his spot at the end of the driveway. Then the bus came, or what I thought was the bus. It wasn't the bright yellow beacon we were used to, the one with the cheerful driver who greeted every kid by name. No, this one was different. Its yellow was faded, almost jaundiced, like it had been sapped of life. The windows seemed darker too, tinted or just dirty. I couldn't tell. And the driver, shrouded in shadows, was a stranger to me. But here's the thing. In the monotony of our daily routines, we often miss the details, the small changes that might otherwise send alarm bells ringing. That morning, I was more concerned with the meeting I was late for than the peculiarities of a school bus. So, when Danny bounded up the steps into the bus, turning to wave at me with that gap-toothed smile of his, all I did was wave back. The bus pulled away, and I retreated inside, oblivious to the fact that I had just watched my world start to crumble. The day dragged on, filled with meetings and deadlines, the usual office drone. It wasn't until the clock neared 3 p.m. that the reality of my routine anticipated the next chapter, waiting at the end of our driveway for Danny to return, full of stories from his day. Only, today was different. The clock ticked past our usual reunion time, and unease began to gnaw at the edges of my mind. Minutes stretched into an hour, and there was no sign of the bus. I called the school, my voice steady but my hands trembling, only to be met with confusion. Danny hadn't been at school that day. My heart stopped. He got on the bus, I stammered, the image of that off-color vehicle flashing before my eyes. The silence on the other end was suffocating before they finally replied, "We don't doubt he got on a bus, but it wasn't one of ours." That was the moment my ordinary day shattered, the moment I stepped into every parent's worst nightmare. And let me tell you folks, nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares you for the chilling realization that your child has vanished into thin air. When I hung up the phone, the world didn't just stand still, it capsized. The words from the school, "It wasn't one of ours," echoed in my mind, bouncing around like a pinball, igniting fear, confusion, and a growing sense of panic with each hit. Danny, my Danny, had vanished, swallowed up by the morning just like any trace of normalcy my life once held. I remember how my hands shook, how my voice cracked as I dialed the police, the words tumbling out in a torrent of disbelief and dread. My son, he was supposed to be at school. The bus, I don't know. It wasn't theirs, I managed to stammer, feeling every bit as disjointed as my explanation sounded. The operator's voice was a calm in the storm, methodical and steady, but it did little to quell the tempest raging inside me. The hours that followed were a blur, a cacophony of blue uniforms, flashing lights, and a barrage of questions that I struggled to answer. What was he wearing? Did you notice anything unusual about the bus? Can you describe the driver? Each query felt like an accusation, a spotlight on my failure to protect my child from whatever fate had befallen him after he stepped onto that bus. As the investigation unfolded, a horrifying picture began to emerge, one that extended far beyond my front yard. 18 other children, all from our neighborhood, hadn't made it to school that day. 18 other families were grappling with the same nightmare, their lives upended in the span of a morning. We were united in our despair, a makeshift family forged in the worst possible circumstances. The community rallied around us. Posters were plastered on every lamppost, social media flooded with their faces, and local news channels picked up the story, casting a spotlight on our collective tragedy. Yet with each passing day, hope dwindled, eroded by the relentless passage of time and the deafening silence from those who took them. Sleep became an elusive specter, taunting me with the promise of rest, only to torment me with visions of Danny, lost, scared, calling out for me in a place I couldn't reach. My home, once filled with the echoes of laughter and life, now stood as a mausoleum of memories, each one a sharp jab of what had been ripped away from me. The police assured us they were doing everything they could, following up on leads, reviewing footage, combing through tips that flooded in from the public. But as days turned into weeks, those assurances felt more and more like hollow platitudes. Words meant to placate rather than to promise any real hope of reunion. And amidst it all, a chilling detail emerged, one that would bind the 18 families together in a grotesque tapestry of uncertainty and fear. Each child, before disappearing, had received an identical cryptic note, slid beneath their door in the dead of night. In neat block letters, it simply read, "Tomorrow's journey is a one-way ride. Be ready." A prelude to our nightmare, a warning none of us could heed. This realization was a gut punch, a cruel twist that left us reeling, questioning everything and everyone. Who could orchestrate such a meticulous vanishing act? And why our children? The why haunted me, a relentless shadow that clung to my every waking moment and invaded my dreams, leaving me gasping for air, drowning in a sea of unanswered questions. In the wake of such surreal tragedy, life had to stagger on, though every step felt like moving through molasses. The once comforting routines became rituals of remembrance and pain, each morning a grim reminder of the void Danny's absence had etched into my life. It was during one of these leaden dawns, as the sun lazily clawed its way above the horizon, casting a half-hearted glow over a world that had lost its color, that the first drawing arrived. I found it tucked into the mailbox, an innocuous white envelope without a return address, its simplicity belying the turmoil it carried. Inside, drawn on a piece of plain paper with crayons that had been pressed down with more force than a child's hand usually holds, was a school bus. Not just any bus, though. This one was perched precariously on the edge of a cliff, its back wheels suspended in the air, teetering over the abyss. And there, in the second row from the back, a window framed a familiar face. Danny's face, eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear, a silent scream captured in wax. The reverse side bore a message, scrawled in a hand too neat to be Danny's. "It's just a little trip." That phrase, those words, they haunted me, a mantra that echoed through the hollows of my mind, a cruel joke that played on loop. But it wasn't just me. One by one, the other parents began to receive their own envelopes, their own drawings. Each depicted the same yellow bus, but the scenes varied wildly. One showed the bus submerged underwater, bubbles escaping as it sank deeper into the murky depths. Another was engulfed in flames, a barn in the background ablaze as if the very world had caught fire. Yet another was enveloped in an impenetrable darkness, the bus's headlights piercing the gloom as it navigated through what looked to be the thickest, blackest woods imaginable. Behind each drawing, the same message: "It's just a little trip." Who was sending these? What twisted mind sought to torment us with these cryptic tokens? The police were baffled. The analysis of the paper, the crayon, the handwriting leading nowhere. It was as if the sender was a ghost, leaving no trace but the chill down our spines. The community's reaction was a tapestry of horror and disbelief. Vigils were held, the drawings displayed like morbid artifacts, a testament to the nightmare we were living. Theories abounded, abductions by a cult, an elaborate prank turned sinister, a warning from a disturbed mind, but nothing made sense. Why send the drawings? Why assure us it was just a little trip? And where were our children? As days melded into nights and back into days, the drawings became a macabre collection, a gallery of our deepest fears and unanswerable questions. Each new piece added to the puzzle, yet no closer to bringing our children back. We clung to them, though, these pieces of paper, as if they were lifelines, the last tangible connection to our missing sons and daughters. In the dead of night, I'd lay them out, tracing the lines with trembling fingers, whispering Danny's name into the silence, hoping against hope for an answer that never came. The drawings were a cruel twist in our already torturous ordeal, a reminder that our children were out there somewhere, on a trip from which they had not returned. And as the collection grew, so did the desperation and the resolve to find them, to decipher the meaning behind the cryptic message and bring our little ones home. In the weeks following the disappearance, the unity we found in our collective despair began to fracture under the weight of our unanswered questions. It wasn't for lack of trying. The police, the FBI, even private investigators hired by some of the families were on the case. We were all searching, grasping for any thread that might lead us back to our children. And then one afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows over a community too weary to notice them anymore, a breakthrough, or so we thought, arrived. A farmer out in Nevada, miles and miles from the last place our children were seen, called in about an abandoned school bus on his property. My heart leaped at the news, a wild cocktail of hope and fear churning in my stomach. The police were cautious in their optimism, tempering our expectations, but it was too late. The mere possibility acted like a beacon, reigniting the dimming flame of hope within each of us. The description matched: the faded yellow, the tinted windows, even the peculiar, almost imperceptible dent on the side that I remembered seeing as the bus drove away that fateful morning. It had to be the same one, it just had to. A team was dispatched immediately, a convoy of hope speeding across state lines, while we waited, huddled around phones and televisions, hanging on every passing second. The wait was excruciating, time stretching and bending in cruel ways. Until finally, a call came through. The bus was empty. No signs of life, no indications of where our children might have gone. Inside, though, was a clue, a list. Names of each missing child, including Danny's, etched not in paper, but in the very fabric of the bus seats, crossed out with what looked to be a deliberate stroke. It was a macabre roll call, a confirmation of our worst fears, and yet, paradoxically, a new thread to cling to in the tapestry of this mystery. This discovery split the night open with fresh waves of media attention, speculations running rampant. Theories previously whispered behind closed doors were now shouted from the rooftops. Had our children been here? What happened to them? The list provided no answers, only deepening the enigma and our despair. Amidst this turmoil, I began to see the bus again. It haunted the edges of my dreams at first, a specter on the horizon, but then it materialized into reality. Each morning, as if mocking my vigil, it would appear at the end of our street. The same sickly yellow, the same obscured windows, idling quietly as if waiting for something or someone. I followed it once, driven by a mixture of desperation and madness. It led me on a winding path through the city, onto highways and into rural backroads, before disappearing into a thick, almost unnatural fog. It was as if it had vanished into another dimension, leaving me alone on an empty road, with no closer to finding Danny. The false hope the bus in Nevada offered had evaporated, leaving us with more questions than answers. The authorities were back to square one, and we were left to grapple with the reality that this clue, this tangible piece of evidence, had led us no closer to our children. It was a bitter pill, one that tasted of despair and helplessness, a constant companion in our now endless wait. In those days, rumors swirled of other buses, other lists, other children taken on little trips from which they never returned. The pattern was disturbingly familiar, a chilling motif in a symphony of sorrow that seemed to have no end. Our story was not unique, it appeared, but part of a larger, darker narrative that spanned across states, across years. And so we waited, clinging to the fragments of hope the list had provided, even as it mocked us with its silence. The bus, that list, the drawings, all pieces of a puzzle we were no closer to solving. But solve it we must. For our children, for Danny, for the peace of our hearts that boarded a mysterious school bus one ordinary Thursday morning and never came home. And now here we are, in the throes of an agony that's become a constant companion, the kind of pain you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. It's a peculiar form of purgatory, this waiting game. Every morning begins with a shard of hope that maybe, just maybe, today will be the day our nightmare ends. But as the sun sets, that hope dims, suffocated by the relentless passage of time and the absence of any new leads. The bus sightings have become a regular occurrence, a daily torment that's as baffling as it is cruel. It rolls up each morning, its presence a silent taunt. The authorities have tried to track it, to intercept it, but each attempt ends in failure, as if the vehicle and its driver are phantoms, slipping through the grasp of reality into the ether. I've taken to standing at the curb every day, a ritual born out of desperation and the irrational fear that the one day I don't will be the day Danny comes back. The neighbors look at me with a mix of pity and unease, their morning greetings growing fewer and farther between. I can't blame them. To the outside world, I'm a shell of the man I once was, consumed by my vigil for a yellow bus that brings nothing but specters. Then yesterday something changed. The bus came again, its approach heralded by the familiar rumble of its engine, a sound I've come to both dread and crave. But as it rounded the corner, my heart leaped. It was full of children laughing and jostling in their seats, a sight so ordinary yet so painfully out of reach. It slowed as it approached, and for a moment I dared to believe. But as it passed, my hope was dashed as cruelly as it had been kindled. None of the children were mine. None of them were any of ours. The bus disappeared as quickly as it had come, leaving behind a trail of exhaust and a renewed sense of despair. So here I stand, another day older, another day deeper in this nightmare. The police tell us to keep the faith, that breakthroughs can come when least expected. But faith is a fragile thing, easily shattered by the realities of our situation. To those of you listening, to those of you who followed our story, I ask for more than just your prayers. Stay vigilant, keep your eyes open, and hug your loved ones a little tighter tonight. Share our story, spread the word, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there will have the piece of the puzzle we've been missing. And to Danny, if by some miracle this message finds its way to you, know that we haven't given up. We never will. Your room is waiting. Your family is waiting. And I'll be here, at the curb, waiting for the bus that will bring you home. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, folks. Not just for the channel, but to help us bring our children home. Your support means more than you can know. Thanks for listening, and remember, in a world where the ordinary can turn into a nightmare, keep those you love close. You never know when you might need them the most.